quiet town in Iowa went to sleep. But by morning, 8 people were found dead inside a small home. All of them had been murdered in their sleep. The killer left behind the weapon, covered the mirrors, and stayed inside the house long after the killings. More than a century later, no one knows who did it. The victims were members of the Moore family. Josiah Moore, a respected businessman, his wife, Sarah, and their 4 children. That night, 2 young sisters, Lena and Ina Stillinger, were also staying at the house as guests. The Moore family lived in the small town of Villisca, Iowa. It was a quiet, close-knit community, the kind of place where doors were often left unlocked, where neighbors trusted each other. Violent crime was almost unheard of. But on the night of June 9th, 1912, that sense of safety would be shattered forever. That Sunday evening, the Moore family attended a church service. Friends later said the family appeared happy and relaxed. After the service, they returned home. The children went to bed. The house became quiet. At some point during the night, someone entered the home. Investigators believe the killer may have been inside even before the family returned, possibly hiding in the attic, waiting, watching. No one knows exactly when the attack began, but sometime after midnight, the silence inside that home was broken. The killer used an axe, one that belonged to the Moore family. He moved through the house slowly, deliberately, room by room. The parents were attacked first, then the children, and finally, the 2 young guests in the upstairs room. All 8 victims were killed while they slept. Most of them never had a chance to wake up. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle. It was as if the killer had complete control over the situation. The next morning, neighbors became concerned when the Moore family failed to appear for their daily routines. A neighbor approached the house. At first, everything seemed normal, but something felt off. When they looked inside, they discovered the unimaginable. All 8 victims had been murdered. The town was immediately thrown into shock. News spread quickly. Within hours, crowds gathered outside the house. Unfortunately, this created another problem. The crime scene became contaminated. People walked through the home, touched objects, moved items. Important evidence may have been lost forever. When investigators examined the house more closely, they noticed several disturbing details. The killer had covered all the mirrors, covered the windows, and even covered the victims' faces with pieces of cloth. It appeared intentional, almost ritualistic. The axe used in the murders was left behind. But what truly shocked investigators was this. The killer didn't leave immediately. There were signs that he had stayed inside the home after the murders. Food had been prepared. Items had been moved. It was as if the killer felt completely safe, as if he knew no one would interrupt him. Law enforcement quickly began searching for suspects, but the investigation faced major challenges. In 1912, forensic science was extremely limited. There were no modern DNA tests, no advanced crime scene techniques. Witness accounts were often unreliable, and the contaminated crime scene made things even harder. Despite this, several suspects emerged. One of the first suspects was a local businessman named Frank Jones. He had previously worked with Josiah Moore. The two men reportedly had a falling out. Some believed the murders could have been motivated by revenge, but there was no solid evidence to prove his involvement. Another suspect was Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher who had been in town at the time of the murders. Kelly behaved strangely during questioning. He later confessed to the crime. But his confession was inconsistent, filled with details that didn't match the evidence. Eventually, he recanted his confession, and in the end, he was found not guilty. As investigators looked deeper into the case, they began to notice something unsettling. The Villisca murders were not entirely unique. Across the United States, in the early 1900s, there were similar cases. Entire families murdered in their homes, at night with an axe, often near railroad lines. The killer would enter quietly, commit the murders, and disappear without a trace. Some investigators believe the Villisca murders may have been the work of a traveling serial killer, someone who moved from town to town, using the rail system, choosing isolated homes, and striking when no one expected it. If this theory is true, then the Villisca Axe Murders may be just one piece of a much larger and more terrifying pattern. Despite years of investigation, no one was ever convicted for the murders. The case slowly went cold. The house remained standing for years, a reminder of the tragedy that took place inside. Over time, the story became part of local legend, a mystery that refused to be solved. Even today, new theories continue to emerge, but none have ever provided a definitive answer. On that quiet night in 1912, something entered that house, something that moved through the darkness, room by room, silently, without mercy. 8 lives were taken, and the person responsible was never caught. More than 100 years later, the Villisca Axe Murders remain one of the most chilling unsolved crimes in American history. Who do you think committed the Villisca Axe Murders? Was it someone from the town, a jealous rival, or a traveling killer who was never identified? Let us know your theory in the comments, and subscribe to Unsolved Mystery Files for more unsolved mysteries and chilling true crime stories. Because sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that never get answers.